What if one simple thing could help you win a World Cup, like say, stealing a run off the last ball? I know it's unlikely. But let us think about a fantasy situation where a player from Middle Zealand named Sichel Mantner was batting in the final of a global tournament of some kind. And off that last ball, actually no, just scratch that. Let's get to the real stuff first. The late Dean Jones used to coach his T20 sides to run off the last ball no matter what. And his example was when he was with Islamabad United. On the last ball of the first innings of this game from 2015, Mohammad Sami hit one out to Ravi Bopara at deep mid-wicket, and it was a simple one-bounce picker. But because they were running for two regardless, it put pressure on Bopara, who fumbled, striving for the run out, and a poor throw coming in meant they eventually took a third run. There was essentially one run on offer. Yet by running as hard as they did, they turned a 1 into a 3. Islamabad won that match by 2 runs. Now, the runs don't always matter. Namibia versus Ireland was a knockout game in round 1 of this tournament. And from Ireland's last ball of the first innings, Simi Singh and Craig Young stole a single, got overthrows, and then Young almost laps Simi as he just keeps running. They steal an extra run here just by not caring about that run out. Of course, they still lost. So how often do teams not take the last ball chance? Well, no one's been keeping track. We can try come up with an idea of roughly when the situation might arise. In a 3-year period from 2017 to 2019, there's been 1,548 balls bowled at the 19.6 over mark of the first innings. Of these, 353 were boundaries and 163 were non-run out wickets. That's almost 1,032 deliveries with a run out chance. And it includes 137 run-outs. So every 7.5 balls, a batter is run out on the last live ball of the game. Of course, there are a lot of last balls where a batter has just got home, and the bails have been dislodged moments later. But even adding another 137 chances on that, that's still 73% of the time where the opportunity is there. Teams dive in the field, batters put their throats in the line with scoops, cricketers play through injuries, and yet regularly we see teams not even try for the last run. They just kind of give it to the opposition. These numbers are very back of a napkin, but anecdotally, think back to all the cricket you watch. You see this repeatedly, in small games that don't matter and occasionally big games that do. The ball is hit straight to a sweeper, the batters run really hard for the first one, and then they just sort of look at each other and shrug. Don't even go for the second run. There is another sport where something similar like this happens. Basketball. A bit like limited overs cricket, basketball is a game where you get roughly the same amount of possessions as your opponent each game. So it's really about how efficiently you use them. Basketball's version of not running forever on the last ball is the half-court shot, where a lot of players at the end of the first, second and third quarter, with a couple of seconds left, won't take a half-court heave. Here is Kevin Durant explaining it a few years ago to the Daily Thunder. It depends on what I am shooting from the field. First quarter, if I'm 4 from 4, I let it go. Third quarter, if I'm like 10 from 16 or 10 from 17, I might let it go. But if I'm like 8 from 19, I'm going to go ahead and dribble one more second and let the buzzer go off, and then I'll throw it up there. So it depends on how the game is going. And if you wonder what you're watching right now, it's Kevin Durant hitting shots from half court, even one while sitting in a chair. And listen to what he said. He's not even talking about how the game is going. He's talking about specifically how his game is going. But as former NBA player Shane Battier once said, we're judged on shooting percentages. I think they should take the heave out of the stat book. It's common sense. Listen to Battier and Durant, two men who paid for their shooting. But they also knew that they were paid based on what their shooting percentage was. Cricket has the same struggle with it. But it's not even just that simple in cricket. Over the years, I've talked to some players about this. So let's look at a couple of other reasons. One is that cricketers don't always know the playing conditions. Like when I first brought this up with a player, they said they didn't do it because it affected net run rate. Wickets don't affect net run rate. But not everyone knows that. We've had 2 major errors in our last 4 World Cup finals by the umpires. The laws of cricket and the playing conditions that support them are quite full on. Another thing that players believe is that it affects Duckworth-Lewis. Wickets do affect DLS. And we all know that. In the 2003 World Cup, South Africa misread the rules, and after Boucher hit an incredible 6 off Murali, he safely knocked the ball to mid-wicket for no run. The famous thing here is that South Africa misunderstood that they were tied and not in front. But the reason that Bouncer didn't play another risky shot is because they knew losing wickets would change the par total. That is so ingrained in cricketers' mind that so few of them seem to know that once the first innings is completed, whether you've lost 0 wickets or 9 wickets in that innings, it doesn't matter. Essentially, a completed innings is a completed innings. It is the score that you made, no matter how many wickets fell. So I know that there are players out there who worry about Duckworth-Lewis when it comes to running off the last ball as well. And we shouldn't discount just how often players aren't thinking about it. They are facing normal balls all the way through, and suddenly the last ball has slightly different rules to every other delivery. But there is another simple reason that a lot of batters don't do this, and it basically follows up from what Kevin Durant and Shane Battier were saying. Batters are judged on averages. The batters at the top of the ICC rankings for T20 cricket are there because they have extremely high averages. Players who average 30 while striking at 200 don't get up there. Averages shouldn't matter as much. When you get out should matter a lot more. For instance, a run out off the first ball is an absolute disaster. A run out from the last ball is of no consequence at all. It's important to note that not many half-court heaves actually come off. In the 18-19 NBA season, it was 1 every 33. But in cricket, you'd assume that if you ran on the last ball every time, there would be a chance of probably an extra run for every, let's say, 10 opportunities, and at times perhaps more with overthrows. Someone on Twitter once suggested to me that a bit like how basketballers don't want the half-court heaves to count against their stats, the last ball run out wouldn't go against the batsman's average. This would mean that every final delivery could be a wicket, a boundary, or an exciting run. It would stop the yawning moments where the ball is being hit straight to a fielder and the batting team jog one, or don't go at all. Innings would end with a bang every time. It's a decent enough idea, but I can't see all the major places where cricket stats are kept, universally agreeing with that. And cricket stats are not straightforward. There is no one official database. For instance, Jack Hobbs was probably the greatest test batter before Bradman, and in his career he made 197 first-class hundreds. Or Jack Hobbs was the greatest test batter before Bradman, and in his career he made 199 first-class hundreds. We don't know. We're not sure. There is no official keeper of cricket stats. So if, say, we implemented this last ball run-out rule, what if CricBuzz and CricInfo said that run-outs did count, and the league and the broadcaster decided they didn't? You would have 2 different averages for some players. And of course, at this point, you may say, wait a minute, why don't they just keep running? Who cares about your average? This is about winning the game. Well, the people who do are the ones whose careers and mortgages depend on them being selected. So do you want to lose 1 or 2 runs off your total career average just to help the team? Maybe a team you won't be with next year anyway? Maybe a team that doesn't even always pick you? There are a lot of people listening to this who will just see this as a black and white issue. You always get the most runs you can for your team. But cricket is a personal game with a team culture around it. We count individual stats and we look at their players' worth alone, in a way that most team sports often don't. So there is this tussle between team and self that always happens in cricket. And you often see tail enders who don't care running around like madmen at the end. That is all well and good for a number 10 like Mohammad Sami. He's not going to get any more games because of a slightly higher batting average. But for a frontline top order player in T20 or ODI cricket, these things massively matter. They did all the work, got themselves through to the end, and now they want to enjoy the fruit of their labour with a slightly bloated red inker higher batting average. Take Dawid Malan, a late bloomer whose test career didn't really bite, and is now desperate for a T20 career in his early 30s. He smashed 100 against New Zealand from 48 balls, and for the last ball, he's standing at the non-striker's end. Sam Billings misses one, it goes through the keeper, and Malan says no. This is what Eoin Morgan said after the game. If we get guys that are not running off the last ball of the game because they want to get a not out, there's something to address. England, the team that ticks all of its boxes with its army of nerdy analysts and Eoin Morgan's detail-led obsession, saw that as a missed opportunity, despite the fact that England scored 241 and would win by 76 runs. But when Malan was left out of the T20Is in South Africa for Joe Denley, people kept pointing at Malan's batting average as the reason he should be playing ahead of Denley. At that point, Malan's T20I average was 52. If he'd been run out attempting that bye, it would have dropped to 47. That's a fairly big drop. And maybe it wouldn't have changed the argument, but 50 is a magic batting number, isn't it? But 2 run-outs early in your career on that last ball could actually dent your overall mark. What England know is that averages just don't mean as much in T20 as they do in other formats, but we've grown up with them. And right at the moment, there is no widely used superior metric ready to replace them, even if many analysts out there don't look at averages that much at all anymore. So there is this conflict within the game. And where I have written or tweeted about this before, cricketers send me through all their games where they have stolen it just by recklessly running from the last ball. But let's focus on one of the most important games of cricket ever played. The World Cup final was probably the greatest ODI match ever played. More runs have been scored in others, and they've been very exciting and close games. But for narrative, farce, tension, and the fact it was a World Cup final, it was very hard to beat. And I know what you're thinking about already. Stokes' path diverting dive, Bolt and the rope, the last ball scramble, and then the super over run out. But there was another huge moment at the end of the first innings of this game. And it was bizarre when it happened, before being largely overlooked when more dramatic things occurred. Mitch Santner was facing the last ball of New Zealand's innings, and Jofra Archer shocks him with a bouncer. Santner is so confused that he ducks it. He thinks about stealing a bye, and then he decides against it. No shot was played, no run was attempted. New Zealand essentially forfeited their last delivery. Recency and result bias usually dictate what we focus on. Few could be blamed for focusing on the end of England's innings or New Zealand's super over more than what happened at the end of New Zealand's first innings. But every run counts, and in that case, a stolen run there might have won them a World Cup. I mean, we don't know. Who knows exactly what Stokes would have done with 1 extra run being chased and how that all would have played out. But New Zealand were 1 run short as it stands. And let's just take a look at it. Jofra Archer comes in, bowls that surprising bouncer. Mitchell Santner is so confused that he ducks it. And then he thinks about running. But Trent Bolt is not quite committing to this run either. So both men kind of end any chance of a run while Josh Buttler comes in and takes the bails off. And in that moment, it's hard to say that Santner was protecting his average. He certainly wasn't thinking about net run rate or DLS, I would have assumed. He just did the normal cricket thing. He ducked in surprise, and then the run wasn't there, so they didn't take it. But the problem here is that the cricket thing to do isn't just run. Run until you can no longer run. Run until there is a 0.01% chance of a run. Just keep running, because you don't know when that last run will be needed. Run, cricket. Run!